Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to your early morning intuitive guidance. Sorry I'm a few minutes late. I was reading the part that I'm going to share with you today and kind of got engrossed in it because it was really good. So you'll be excited, I think. So we'll give it a minute here while everybody pops on. Looking for some awesome feedback on this section because I think it's probably going to ring true for many of us. Good morning, Abigail. Welcome, welcome. Glad you are here. Good morning, good morning. We'll give it a minute as everybody pops in. Yeah, a few minutes late this morning. Just couldn't quite get rolling. Thank you for the sunrise and sunshine. I appreciate it. I think we're supposed to see some sun around noon. We actually had rain yesterday. Good morning, Carolyn. Welcome. Not until late in the day, which was fine because I got my walk in and everything, so that was good. And good morning, Beth. Welcome. Glad you're here. Good morning. And Ruth Ann, good morning. Everybody's starting to pop in. Glad you're all here. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready for some good reading, some things to think about. Good morning, Angie. Welcome, welcome. Glad you're here. So, good morning, Joe Neal. Awesome. Glad you're here. And I put on my lady earrings again today because I just felt like it was a day for her. So I'm gonna wear her for the day. I had her on yesterday too. It just felt like appropriate for the day. So we are up to 7. We've got lots of people on here today. So we have a section from Taking the War Out of Our Words, The Art of Powerful Non-Defensive Communication by Sharon Ellison. And as you all know, I love this book because it's so helpful in terms of giving us the words we can use. Good morning, Cindy. Good morning, Janine. Welcome, welcome. Give us the words we can use in a non-defensive way to create the kind of communication we're looking for. And I don't know about all of you, but I've certainly been having some communication struggles lately. So there were some things in here that I think will be relevant to my process and hopefully relevant to yours. So let's start with some breaths. Nice deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. Good morning, Judy. In through the nose, out through the mouth. I can feel like I got a little more knots in there. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Okay, just kind of shaking it off. I had yoga yesterday and I took a walk. So I did my fitness routine for yesterday. And today I think the afternoon is going to be beautiful, so it'll be great for a walk. So part in the book where we are, for those of you who have the book, Taking the War Out of Our Words, The Art of Powerful Non-Defensive Communication. I'm on page 248, and we have been talking about the practice of becoming non-defensive and how to do that with peers. And now we're talking about non-peer relationships, so where there's a power differential of some kind or a perceived power differential. So the first little chunk is just on non-peer relationships, and then the remainder is on family relationships. You ready for this? Non-peer relationships. Non-peer hierarchical relationships have a power differential where one person has more authority than the other. Examples are parent-child relationships, supervisor-employee relationships, and certain professional relationships such as doctor-patient or therapist-client. Good morning, Gwen. Glad you are here. Welcome. The nature of the disparity may lie in the professionals having more knowledge or more legal authority. So, and that can impact things. But many of these techniques that we're using, whether it's the neutral questioning, whether it's the predictions, whether it's the statements, can all be utilized even in those power differential circumstances. I had a client yesterday where her husband actually addressed his boss in this kind of a manner, and it went very well. So here's the part about family relationships. Let's see what chimes for all of you. And we're up to 11 of you on here. So I'm just happy about this, thinking 11 of you are going to have some new ideas in terms of communicating with people you typically may have difficulty with. You're going to take this information out into the world and try it out and see how it goes. And then let's say you're talking to your parents. Maybe you still have both of your parents. That's 2 more people who now know this stuff and can go forth and choose to use some of it. Can you see how this could sweep? I love this. I love this. Family relationships. Our bond with our parents is usually our first major relationship, one in which the power differential is extreme. In some workshops for parents, I have had each person take a turn lying on the floor while the rest of us stand around cooing, "Oh, the baby is so cute." Sometimes we put our heads down close or pat the person on the head. Many people find this experience to be quite intense. And most come out of it knowing exactly why we have so many children's stories about giants. The person taking the part of the child looks up at adults towering overhead like giant redwoods. Psychologically, I think that experience exemplifies the kind of power we start out perceiving our parents to have. Even as adults, many of us have not shed that imprint. Our parents' control over us and over how we interact with our siblings and other peers has a huge effect on how we deal with our own authority and the authority of others. Most adults carry around a great deal of parental baggage that depletes our personal strength and ability to fully mature. While it is possible to address issues of parental authority indirectly, most of us could do much more to develop direct, non-defensive conversations with our own parents. Doing so can be a very freeing experience. And how many of you right now have your toes curling going, "Oh, hell no." Breathe. Very good. Keep breathing. Doing so can be a very freeing experience. In the majority of cases, I think the relationship will improve rather than deteriorate. If it does deteriorate, I think we are still faced with one of two choices: to live our lives without asserting our own individuality, and we can see how well that works out, doesn't it? Or to assert it and let our parents choose how they will respond. My own experience leads me to believe that once we decide to assert ourselves, it is often easier to assume our adult stature with our parents than we think it might be. Fabulous. Good, good, good. Let's see. Should have checked the book. No worries, dear. No worries. We're working on it right now. There's a reason this book popped up today. One man said to me, "When I finally spoke up to my father, it was so easy. Suddenly I looked at him and he seemed so much smaller." Good morning, Brenda. Glad you're here. Welcome, welcome. Haven't seen you in a while. "It was shocking to think that I had been afraid of him until I was almost 50. Differences with our parents frequently affect major events in our lives. We feel a loss of control about creating what we want, even when we plan our own commencement from graduate school, our own weddings, or our own children's bar mitzvahs. I would like to see adults assert their wishes more clearly and respectfully. Often we are either unassertive, or we get mad and express ourselves harshly. So here's an example about having a wedding. So you want a maelstrom, that can be one where all the family dynamics show up, right? When Caitlin was planning her wedding, she knew her parents would object that her ceremony was not in accordance with the tenets of the church in which she had been raised. Since they were outspoken with their judgments, she feared that they would express negative opinions at the wedding and dampen her joy on the occasion. She wanted to be married in a community ceremony, but her anguish over her parents' disapproval ran so deep that she thought of having a private ceremony or going to the justice of the peace. Finally, she decided to ask her parents, "Do you think you can feel happy at my wedding if I don't do it in accordance with the traditions of your religion?" As they inwardly struggled with their answers, Caitlin also talked about her own feelings and needs. In part of her statement, prior to making her prediction, because remember, we have questions, we have statements, we have predictions, she expressed her feelings about the choice they might make. So Caitlin is saying this: "I love you and would be incredibly sad to be married without you. At the same time, I do not want to have you there if you act judgmental or say critical things to people about the ceremony Steve and I have created. It is in keeping with our own beliefs, and I don't want to feel pressure or conflict because you disapprove. I don't want anything to damage the joy of our wedding day." So there's her statement. "If you do not believe you can come to the ceremony without having a negative attitude or saying critical things, then I would rather you not come." First prediction, that's the one side. Remember when we make predictions, she suggests that making both sides of a prediction or multiple sides of a prediction is a good thing. Good morning, Bonnie. Welcome. Glad you're here. We're doing Taking the War Out of Our Words, Powerful Non-Defensive Communication. So here's the second part. Here's the second prediction of first side. So she's actually going to add in a little bit more than we typically do. Typically, if we're making a prediction, we perceive two sides, right? And we want to spell out both. Sometimes there are multiple sides, and we want to spell out all of them. In this case, she's got two different predictions. She's doing one side of the one prediction and two sides of the other prediction. So the first prediction was she would rather not have them come if they're going to be critical. That was her first prediction, one side. So here's the second prediction, one side. If you don't come, we could plan some kind of reception with you and your church friends after we get back from our honeymoon. We could share our happiness in a way that would feel better to all of us. So there's her second prediction, the one side. Here's going back to the first prediction, the second side of it. If you can come and not express negative feelings about the wedding, I would be so happy and proud to have you there. It would make my joy complete. Caitlin's non-defensive process was a success, but not just because her parents decided to go to the wedding. And the first thing I want to say about this is it doesn't mean it was a pretty process. There were probably a lot of belches, wheezes, and coughs as her parents were working their way through their issues with how she was going to conduct her wedding, right? It may not have been pretty, but it was effective. It was successful, okay? So don't be looking for rainbows and sunshine when you do this kind of stuff. Be willing to bear the discomfort and allow the process to work. It was successful because Caitlin was willing to demonstrate her authority with regard to creating her own wedding while offering her parents clear choices in a loving way. I believe this process also helps create healthy relationships between parents and young children. When we ask non-defensive questions, we honor their individuality, their unique feelings, beliefs, and thoughts. When we make statements, we say what we hear, see, and experience in a non-lecturing way. Come on, parents, we can do this. And so treat our children with more equality. When we set effective limits, we provide our children with security and encourage respect, competency, and reciprocity. So it's kind of like putting up the bumpers on the bowling alley. We're going to make sure that the ball goes where we want it to go. Let's see. A comment children often make to those who interact with them according to these principles is, "You treat me like a real person." I believe such communication will encourage our children to be respectful without fearing authority figures or needing to engage in so much rebellion. And I certainly found that with my daughter, who was an incredibly rebellious child, that if I merely laid out the consequences, if you do this, this will happen. If you do that, that will happen. And she'd often pick the one that I was hoping she wouldn't pick. Then it was just my job to hand out the consequences. That girl got more consequences than I can shake a stick at. But over time, and actually recently she came back to me and apologized for something. She's 30 now. that played out when she was a kid. But it can be tiring, especially when this isn't how you were raised. You have to practice doing things in a different way. And it can be a little bit effortful on the front end, but so worth it. So worth it. All right? Many adults who were not treated respectfully by their parents have a fear of authority. They often translate it to others outside their family of origin. Harriet told me about her experience with her mother-in-law, Gwen, who arrived on Friday afternoon before her son came home from work, and she would begin to move their living room furniture around, making comments like, "This would look better over here, wouldn't it?" Terrified of the ramifications of trying to deal with her husband's mother regarding this issue, Harriet came to dread Gwen's visits. It never occurred to her to approach the situation by asking a simple question. "Do you dislike the way our furniture is arranged?" Good morning, Lisa. Welcome. Glad you're here. Haven't seen you in a while. Gwen did have skill in interior decorating, but the two women had not found a positive way to talk with and learn from each other. Harriet shut out all advice from Gwen. Gwen would rearrange the furnishings as if the house were hers. Eventually they did talk, and Harriet was able to ask a number of questions, including this one. "What kind of effect do you think it has on me when you move the furniture without asking me?" So it's a process question, neutral tone. Remember when we were learning about the questions, we had all different varieties of questions? This one was a process question in a neutral tone. And again, sometimes we have to take a pause to get ourselves into that place of being able to say it in a neutral tone. A key to that, I think, is realizing no matter how it turns out, you're going to have done what you needed to do. You're going to have spoken up for yourself, and that is hugely important, okay? So, she also told Gwen how it made her feel. So here's Harriet talking to Gwen. I hear you sometimes asking about whether something would look good in a certain place. That's a statement, part 1, neutral tone. At the same time, it seems like rather than really asking for my opinion, you have already decided and moved the furniture before you ask. Statement, part 2, neutral tone. When you just move things without asking me, I feel frustrated. I don't feel like I have control over my own furniture, and I start to get nervous about having you come over, which I don't like because I want to have a good relationship with you. I do like some of your ideas, but I end up resisting all of them when I don't feel I have any choice. I want to make my own choices, and I also want to consult Tom before setting up the living room so it fits both of our needs. So there's a statement, part 3, personal experience, her full expression, okay? If you don't move things without talking to me, then I will feel that you respect this as our home and will feel more open to hearing your ideas. So there's a limit setting prediction, part 1, neutral tone. Harriet chose not to add the other side of her prediction, but she could have said, if you continue to move things without talking to me, I will ask you not to do it. Limit setting prediction, part 2, neutral tone. Here's the part where I'm like, yeah, oh yeah, here we go. We might get so enraged thinking about such invasive behavior that we find ourselves wishing Harriet would really nail Gwen. But entrenching the power struggle would be disempowering to both women. When we take the bait, when we rise to that occasion and bare our claws and, snarl and whatever, it disempowers both of us. It becomes that power struggle that doesn't benefit anybody, okay? If they go the other way, if they go the way they're going, they can each gain confidence and each other's acceptance more easily if at least one of them initiates a non-defensive process. After Harriet spoke to her mother-in-law the first time, Gwen was a bit huffy, to say the least. But they gradually worked on it. Again, it doesn't mean it's going to be sunshine and rainbows. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it is well worth doing it. Within a year, they came to a place where they could laugh about their earlier conflicts. Gwen would say, well, I guess I was a little dominating, and Harriet would respond, and I guess I was pretty passive. I just stood there and let you move all the furniture around. Over time, as people build family ties, they can often look back and laugh over earlier problems. However, given the added difficulty of blending more than one family system, achieving such change, usually using traditionally defensive modes, could take many years and or never work at all. How many of you have heard the term step monster, or, people who lament about their spouse's children from a previous marriage and how it ain't going well? Well, if the defensiveness is what's happening, no wonder it's not going well. No wonder it's not going well. All right? I believe there's greater risk that changes might be for the worse. So if you use defensive maneuvering, it may suppress some behavior on someone's part. Doesn't mean they're going to like you because you've pushed back in an unpleasant way. When you push back in a neutral way, when you're just asking the questions, staying neutral, when you're making the statements, when you're doing the predictions, things can turn around. And people are oftentimes really surprised how quickly they turn around. Being non-defensive certainly does not mean we can always easily resolve issues to our satisfaction. Sometimes we can't. At each juncture here, I want to acknowledge that any situation I described could have become more complicated. For example, Gwen might not be open to giving up any control, and Harriet's husband might deny that there is any problem. It's no big deal. Let her do what she wants to do, and we'll move the furniture back when she's gone. I think we have to evaluate any situation. Am I ready to take this on? As my friend Sue says, is this a ditch I'm willing to die in? And if so, pick a manageable piece of the puzzle to start with. For me, it's also important to remember that whatever I do not take on can give a shape to my life that I do not want. So basically, she's saying you can choose to address it on the front end, or it's going to continue to impact things over time. Like in that case, I could see Harriet stop being willing to have Gwen over. Well, if your mom's coming over, I'm leaving. You know, how these things end up going, right? So to take the non-defensive approach and deal with the uncomfortable consequences that are likely to happen in the process of getting to that place of that now we're good. Now this goes better. Now we have some boundaries set out. This is working well. You have to go through that valley of the shadow of death to get there. All right? Be willing to do that. Be willing to go through that and get there. And are there going to be people who are stuck and entrenched in the defensive stuff? Absolutely. Sometimes when you give them a little bit of time, they can come back and say, you know, I was thinking about what you said, and they can roll with you a little better. All right? So that's a lot of good stuff. For those of you who don't have the book, I think it's well worth getting, because like Cindy just said, she's been running into that stuff. She could go back to the book and look, okay, what scenario is kind of similar to what I'm experiencing right now, and what words could I use? And we can always go back after the fact. Many people think, you know, I never think of a good thing to say until way afterward. Doesn't matter. Go back. You know, I was thinking about what happened the other day, and put it out there. Bring it back up. Make it an opportunity to heal that kind of dynamic and do something different. You don't have to wait for the next event to come along. Go back and correct one that has been more recent, has been lurking there. How many of us have those things that, you know, it happened 5 years ago and we're still nursing that grudge? No. Let's get rid of this stuff. Be willing to tackle some of this. Test drive this. Be willing to have it not go well. Be willing to make mistakes with it. Go back to the book and go, oh, I see what I did wrong. I can do this differently. Be willing to do that stuff. And I think you will find that your life opens up. Have an awesome day. See you again tomorrow. Get some practice with this stuff. Remember, you're capable of far more than you think you are. Bye-bye.